All right, I can't stay away from coffee tests. So there's been a bit of discussion, thanks to Lance Hedrick and some recent videos he's put out about distribution methods. And given that in the past I did a fairly big analysis of WDT, and I'll link that down below in case you never watched that, where I found that, WDT does have some impact on extraction depending on how you do it. I wanted to explore, hey, is shaking coffee as good or better as far as, changing extraction parameters compared to WDT. And so the first thing I want to talk about before I even do any testing, because I at this moment, recording this, have not actually done the test yet. And I just want to point out starting off that there is a not insignificant amount of technique involved in just shaking the coffee up and getting it into the portafilter. So I've got my little dosing cup here. And this is from a company called CBSC. It's just a Korean coffee company, and I got this off of Amazon a while back. And it's a dosing cup for a 58 millimeter portafilter, and all standard stuff. And this is what I've got. And I didn't want to have to buy a brand new special dosing cup with the little bottom with the bell. I thought, let's use what I have, because again, is this something that a normal person can accomplish without specialized tools? That might be an advantage. Even if it's the same, if it doesn't require special tools, then maybe that's great. But here's the first issue. Like I said, there is some technique involved just in shaking the coffee, because the way this thing works is it fits nicely into the portafilter. You turn it upside down, and then your grounds end up in the portafilter. So this is where I would shake. And so he shakes for about 5 seconds, I think. So if I shake, okay, and then I set this thing down. And if I pull the dosing cup off, I'm just going to tap it to get some of the grounds off the bottom here, because they might stick. Here's the issue. Right, you'll see that this is not extremely even. I have a really big ridge here that was up against the wall. And so that's one of the issues is, Lance, in his video, he's got a funnel, and then he says he just kind of does some side taps. And so with the coffee I'm using, it doesn't just work like magic. I'm not going to get a nice, even bed by just doing a dosing cup and shaking and just doing some side taps. I'd have to get fairly aggressive with these taps to get that to balance out. So with that, before I even do the test, let me acknowledge, I don't know that a regular dosing cup can accomplish the same thing as that blind shaker cup that he's using, simply because that Weber shaker cup and some like it, they have that kind of belled distributor at the bottom that when it opens, it kind of distributes the grounds a little bit better. Just using a dosing cup seems to create a very lumpy surface for me. Now, if I do it just right, I can get it kind of level, but still not as good as what a WDT will do. And so I would say that this may be a method that requires a bit of technique and experience before you even get good results. And so from that standpoint, even before I start, I lean towards WDT probably is going to be a little easier to accomplish. And given that, if I want that other cup, I'm going to have to spend money anyway. To me, I'm going to have to see a pretty big improvement with the shaker method to even worry about it, because otherwise, why get more crap to get an extra 0.25% extraction? To me, that's just not worth it. Now, if you're starting out and you haven't bought anything, then maybe it is. But before I even get into the data collection, that's some things to think about. But that said, let's pull some shots and see what the data says. All right, so just finished up. Let's see what we can find with all of this stuff. So I'm going to do this live, so I don't know what the results are just yet. So let me do a little sort. So this coffee is a fairly high extraction coffee, basically. And what I mean by that is I have difficulty getting the extraction down on this coffee. The shots, so just so you understand where the numbers are coming from, I did a 19-gram dose with roughly a 45-gram target output. The actual average was 45.28 over all the shots. So I did 5 shots WDT, 5 shots shaking. I alternated the order. So basically I did shaker method WDT, shaker method WDT, back and forth just to try to reduce any issues with the order. And so the average time overall was about 25 seconds a shot. So this coffee is not necessarily my favorite. It runs a little fast. It extracts a little high. That's actually part of why I used it in this test, is because, well, I'm kind of wanting to get rid of it and use something else. So I had a bunch of this and I'm like, let's use this for the test because it's not my favorite. So the extraction yield average for the WDT method, and I just did a basic WDT. So I basically would grind into a dosing cup. I would then put it into the portafilter, and then I would do a basic WDT. That averaged 23.74% yield. And yeah, that's pretty high. That's higher than I want it to be. Like I said, it's just issues with this coffee that I don't like. For the shaker method, where again, I would grind into the cup, and then I would shake in the cup and portafilter, that was actually 25.38. So it was actually lower extraction using the shake method. Next thing I want to know is, what about the standard deviation? Was there more variability in the extraction? And it looks like they were close, but the standard deviation of the extraction was lower with the WDT. So not only did it have a higher extraction yield, it also was more consistent. And then the last thing I want to check was on the time. So the average extraction time for the WDT, 24.92, 24.92. So there was zero difference in the speed, the average speed of the shots. Now let's do statistical test. Was there really a statistical difference? Let's find out. So we're going to do a little t-test here. So I'm going to t-test the two different methods on yield. So was there a statistical difference on the yield? So there's one array, there's the second. I want a two-tailed, assume equal variance. This is just a vanilla t-test, and it says there is no difference, 24% p-value, which is nothing. So no statistical difference at all in the two methods on extraction statistically. Again, raw numbers, there is a slight higher extraction with WDT, but that's like 0.25%, and it is not statistically significant at all. Now on the shot time difference, again, since they had the exact same shot time average, there's no statistical difference there that can be found because their average was the same. I will say, personal preference-wise, WDT was mechanically a much more consistent method, meaning the actual process to me was much easier to get the same every time doing the WDT because as I showed you at the beginning, whenever you're using the dosing cup and trying to do the shake, I kept finding that the coffee bed was much less even, and I would kind of have to redo it sometimes to get a consistent bed on the top before tamping, because sometimes you would do the shaker and it would just have huge piles on one side. And so I think the shaker was much more technique dependent. It was just harder to get it consistent mechanically. And so my preference really would be to keep doing the WDT because it just seems like it's easier to do consistently. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going to wrap this up. Again, I don't see any difference here as far as the extraction yield, and my preference is for the WDT just because mechanically it feels like it's easier to be consistent with it. That's not a knock on Lance's video. Again, I don't know. I'm not using the same equipment he is. Maybe using that special cup really does make a difference that I can't find in my methods. I'm using different coffees. I'm dosing slightly different. I'm certainly getting higher extraction yields. And so, you know, all of that may come into play. And the last thing I'll say is, look, experimentation and these types of tests, it takes replication to really figure out what's going on. One test by itself often isn't enough unless it's a big, robust test, right? I mean, the first time I tested WDT, there's a reason why I did such a large test with such a high number of samples. It's because, well, I wanted that test to be really, really solid. This test, I did 5 shots each. And so you're going to get just variance in testing. And that's where replication really comes into play. So, this is one of those things that I'd say test it yourself. If you got a dosing cup, try the shaker method, do your WDT, see what happens for yourself. To me, yeah, I'm going to stick with WDT because I can't find a difference, and it certainly seems to be more consistent for me, just in the mechanics. So that's it. If you got any feedback, feel free to leave it down below. Thanks.